Walter Broom with the Wednesday, September 10th edition of the CBC Evening News. In our top story tonight, the long-awaited concessions for the tourism industry have been approved. And according to Finance Minister Chris Sinclair, they should be rolled out by next week. The Finance Minister made the announcement during the third quarterly meeting of the BHTA at the Hilton. Minister Sinclair told the tourism players one final meeting has been scheduled about some legal issues, but the process has been agreed and completed and a fail-safe put in place in the interim.
I will go ahead and instruct the appropriate letters be issued under the cover of 67B of the Income Tax Act to the relevant government agencies, notifying that in lieu, if necessary, of the proposed changes to the TDA, which we expect to be concluded this week and to go to Parliament Cabinet shortly, that the full list of concessions agreed between the industry players, the Ministry of Tourism, BTI, Ministry of Finance, and approved by Cabinet, take full effect from next week.
Mr. Sinclair apologized for the length of time it has taken for the concessions to come to fruition, but he said there were still other tax breaks and benefits tourism players could have accessed in the interim. He also warned the BHTA membership that once they have started to reap the benefits of what amounts to hundreds of millions of dollars in breaks, the entire island will have high expectations of the sector.
Not only will it be expected that we will see sandals-type investments, but more jobs, more foreign exchange earnings, and definitely more meaningful linkages with connected domestic economic sectors such as agriculture, manufacturing, and the cultural industries as well.
Earlier in his address, BHTA President Sunil Chatrani said tourism is finally being seen as equally important as the manufacturing or agriculture sectors.
The tourism sector is finally recognized as an export sector, which is the largest foreign exchange earner for our economy. Just like the raw materials required in the manufacturing process, so too is the food and beverage and consumables required for the hospitality sector to produce that guest experience. The only difference between these sectors is that the tourism sector is the single largest contributor to our foreign reserves.
He says the BHTA will now seek to get other pressing issues resolved, including the confusion relating to the direct tourism services registration with the VAT office and the municipal solid waste tax.
It is still an issue that will resurface closer to the time that payment becomes due. To complicate matters even more, some of our members are not being given clearance certificates because this tax has not been paid, even though the date for payment has been extended. This is affecting the clearing of vital items through customs. Some of these items are required for major refurbishments.
Mr. Chatrani adds that they're also working on amendments to the Tourism Development Act. Lawmen are investigating yet another gun crime tonight, this following the shooting of a St. James man this morning. Ryan Broom reports.
The tranquility of Fitzvillage Beach in St. James was shattered this morning by the sound of gunfire. It left several onlookers terrified. Most people who were nearby when the shooting occurred declined to go on camera, but they told CBC News that a man known as Paulie, who lives in the area, was sitting with his infant son on the beach around 11 o'clock. CBC understands that a man who was walking on the beach at the time went up to him, pulled out a gun, and fired 4 shots, striking him about his body before fleeing the scene. The child was unharmed. Reports also indicate that the gunman was pursued by a group of men, but he managed to escape. The incident left some of the National Conservation Commission workers who were working nearby visibly shaken and traumatized. And while the area is normally frequented by visitors, fortunately none of them was there at the time of the incident. Inspector Graham Husbands of the Police Force's Northern Division gave an update at the time.
Police received a report that there was gunshots being fired in this Fitzvillage area. The police responded, and on their arrival, male was being transported in a private vehicle. That male is presently at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital receiving medical attention. The nature of the injuries I cannot say at this time.
CBC understands that the victim's girlfriend took him to the hospital in a private motorcar. Up to press time, police said he was listed in critical condition at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, but his name had not been officially released. This was the second shooting incident in just over a month in the Fitz Village area. On August 4th, 23-year-old Mark Walton was at a bus shelter in the area when he was accosted by two men. One of them reportedly shot him before fleeing the scene. Walton collapsed and died before he could receive medical attention. Two men have since been charged with his murder. Ryan Broom, CBC News.
Thanks, Ryan. Government has announced plans to centralize a number of its geriatric services. In making the disclosure, Health Minister John Boyce said it will include major upgrades at the geriatric hospital. He was speaking this morning at the start of a seminar for nursing personnel at the NUPW headquarters, which has as its theme the way forward for geriatric care.
This is a difficult but also an easy task, because even from the point of view of simple landscaping, I've determined that this is something which we really need to start to put in place at a place like the geriatric hospital on Beckers Road. It's a large piece of real estate. It is essentially very tired, and we recognize that there has to be substantial repairs at this facility, and this is on one of our major priorities as we hold this conference today. It is proposed that a subacute care facility would strengthen medical services, enabling patients to be referred from the Queen Elizabeth Hospital to the geriatric hospital for continuation of this treatment.
Mr. Boyce says the centralization concept will also include support services.
The ministry is currently addressing the centralization of its kitchen and laundry services. This initiative is expected to cut expenditure at several small individual kitchens and laundries at the various state-owned health institutions around the island. The centralization of the services is intended to curtail wastage as a means of financial saving during these challenging economic times. In addition to remodeling of the complex, the government recognizes that there would always be need for training and retraining of our staff.
Well, Barbadians started receiving their income tax refunds from Wednesday, August 27th, and they will continue to do so until all refunds have been disbursed. This is according to the Barbados Revenue Authority, which says the refunds include both the direct deposit and checks. The BRA also says almost 4,000 fewer people filed income tax returns for income year 2013 than for income year 2012. According to the figures, 79,327 people filed income tax returns for income year 2012, but that number dipped noticeably this year to 75,582. Communications officer with the BRA, Erica Lazar, tells CBC that the process of refund disbursement is on a first file, first served basis, which means those who filed early will receive theirs first. Under the Income Tax Act, interest is paid on refunds that are received after October 31st. But BRA officials explain that the interest only applies to filings that are made before the deadline date. Well, 3 St. John men have been charged by police for illegal possession of sea eggs during the closed season. They are 23-year-old Dion Norville and 41-year-old Anthony Payne of Martins Bay, as well as 34-year-old Omar Bootman of Sherburne. Police say the men were held after the Marine Unit received a report of suspicious activity on the beach at Roches St. John, close to Martins Bay. A total of 350 sea eggs were seized. The men are expected to appear in the District C Magistrates Court tomorrow to answer the charges. We'll have more news ahead in just a moment, but first we want to hear from you on the question, do you believe a gun amnesty would help to reduce the spate of gun crimes across Barbados? Text yes or no to short code 8111. We'll have the result for you at the end of the news.
When you are feeling a little low,
itching and scratching, and you feel the pain in your tummy.
You may have worms, so tell your mommy. You may even feel a little queasy. Cause you may have a runny tummy. When you feel the pain in your tummy, you may have worms, so tell your mommy. Anyone can have worms. One dose of Centel eliminates most common intestinal worms. Deworm your family with Centel twice a year.
People would be going down to Trafalgar Square where they were going to be taken off to their boat with all their belongings, chairs and pots and pans and so on. And persons who wrote at the time said that most of them were singing hymns and so on as the boat traveled along.
Barbadian students at the Hugh Wooding Law School in Trinidad are facing a dilemma. They're now hearing that they'll have to pay their own tuition fees. One of them is Frank Clark, who told CBC they were informed by school officials that they have to foot the bill. Mr. Clark says the last-minute change has left them scrambling to figure out what to do next.
When we were inquiring for the whole summer, we were told, no, we don't have to pay. To the extent that they reduced the money that we applied for student revolving on the premise that we don't have to pay. So we actually got less money. Now on the day of registration, we're registering now. To register, you don't just register at Hugh Wooding. You have to go down to St. Augustine, register, and then go back up. So when people did that and went back up to register, they were told that the government is not paying, that we have to pay the full fees. The problem is, if they knew we had to pay, we should have been told before, not on the day of registration we were in Trinidad, because people would not have made arrangements accordingly. And that's the problem.
Mr. Clark says they now have to look for 13,000 TT dollars per year, which is just over 4,000 Barbados dollars to pay those fees.
So I am stranded, and we have so many students that are stranded because then they have to come back and go to another line and try to use the funds that they would have allocated for something else to now pay $13,000. It's ridiculous.
Principal of the school, Miriam Samaru, tells CBC that the registrar received a fax from the Ministry of Education in Barbados indicating that the government will be paying 85% of the cost and that students are expected to cover the rest. CBC tried to reach Education Minister Ronald Jones by telephone and via text. However, there was no response up to news time. Some part-time tutors at the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill, could be out of a job this semester. This as the campus reviews the fallout from government's tuition policy. News of this from campus registrar Ken Walters during a news conference yesterday, where he revealed that nearly 2,500 fewer students would be attending the campus this year. He says where necessary, full-time staff will pick up any slack when contracted tutors have to go.
Where we have courses which haven't been fully subscribed, they're being reviewed basically. Fortunately, we have a high percentage of very part-time temporary people providing services to the university. People doing tutorials and that sort of thing. So we can manage that process in the short term very effectively. But in terms of long term, I think by the end of this semester, we'll have a better idea of where we are and therefore we have to make some decisions in terms of going forward. But we haven't reached that stage yet.
The Ministry of Culture, Sports and Youth has apologized to the staff of its 2014 National Summer Camps program over the delay in processing outstanding payments. According to Minister Stephen Lashley, in order to facilitate and maintain its commitment to delivering a free, structured and supervised summer program, the ministry sought and received alternative funding support. He says the history of payment of camp staff has been that once the first tranche is paid, the other payments follow quickly thereafter in 3 installments. The Culture Minister says the first payment is usually at the end of week 2 of the camps, the second at the end of week 4, and the final payment at the end of week 5. But he says the traditional payment pattern had to be altered because of the disbursement mechanisms of the new funding source, which falls outside the ministry's ambit. In apologizing for the delay, the minister said all facilities are now in place to ensure the outstanding payments would be speedily processed. The National Summer Camps program was held from July 14th to August 15th this year. It ran for 5 instead of 6 weeks.